One waitress, one arrogant millionaire, and a grand piano. What started as a cruel attempt to humiliate her turned into a moment that silenced the room and shattered egos. You won't believe how she turned the tables with nothing but her talent. It was a warm Friday evening at LaFontaine, an upscale restaurant in Raleigh, North Carolina. The air was filled with the hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the soft melodies of jazz playing from a corner piano. Deborah, a 25-year-old waitress with a quiet demeanor and a spark in her eyes, moved gracefully between tables, balancing plates and smiles. To most, she was just another face in uniform, but inside, she carried dreams bigger than the luxurious dining room around her. Deborah's true passion wasn't serving tables, it was music. Ever since she was a child, the piano had been her refuge, a place where she could express every joy, sorrow, and unspoken thought. But dreams don't pay the bills, and working long shifts at LaFontaine was a stepping stone toward the music academy she longed to attend. Few knew about her talent, except for the restaurant staff, who occasionally caught her playing the old upright piano in the back room during breaks. That night, as the evening rush began to settle, the door swung open, and in walked Leonard Grayson, a wealthy entrepreneur known for his sharp tongue and love for spectacle. Instantly recognizable, Leonard made an entrance like he owned the room. His presence made even the most seasoned staff stand a little straighter. Deborah's colleagues exchanged knowing glances. Leonard was not an easy guest. As Leonard scanned the room, his gaze landed on Deborah. Something about her caught his attention, and a smirk crossed his face. Deborah felt the weight of his stare but brushed it off, focusing on her work. Little did she know, Leonard had already decided she would be his entertainment for the night. As the night went on, Leonard's arrogance grew. He held court at his table, loudly recounting tales of his success and mocking those he deemed less ambitious. When Deborah returned to his table with a bottle of wine, Leonard stopped her mid-step. "Tell me, Deborah," he said, his voice cutting through the noise, "what do you do when you're not carrying plates? Surely a young woman like you has dreams." Deborah hesitated, then replied softly, "I play the piano sometimes." Leonard's eyes lit up. "A pianist? Huh, how fascinating. Why don't you give us a little performance?" Deborah froze. The room seemed to quiet as the weight of his words hung in the air. "I couldn't," she said quickly, forcing a nervous laugh. "I'm just here to work tonight." But Leonard wasn't about to let it go. "Nonsense," he declared, his voice booming. "There's a piano right there in the corner. Show us what you've got. Surely a future star like you isn't afraid of a little audience." His companions chuckled, clearly enjoying the show. Other diners turned their heads, curious about the commotion. Deborah's chest tightened. She wanted to say no, to walk away, but Leonard's challenge hung in the air, daring her to rise to it or crumble under its weight. Against her better judgment, Deborah agreed. "Fine," she said, her voice steady but low, "I'll play." The room bristled with anticipation as Deborah walked toward the piano. Each step carried the weight of both fear and defiance. She sat at the grand piano, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the keys. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes were soft and hesitant, but as her confidence grew, the music swelled. She chose a soulful rendition of Clair de Lune by Debussy, and the melody filled the room like a thread. Delicate but unyielding, the diners fell silent, their earlier chatter replaced by a collective stillness. Even Leonard, who had been whispering to his companions, went quiet. By the time she struck the final chord, the room was utterly still. Then, as if released from a spell, the audience erupted into applause. Some diners stood, clapping with a fervor that brought tears to Deborah's eyes. Her co-workers, who had been watching from the sidelines, joined in, their faces lit with pride. Leonard, however, remained seated. His smirk was gone, replaced by an expression of shock and discomfort. He raised his hands and clapped slowly, a hollow sound compared to the cheers around him. But even his hesitant applause couldn't overshadow what Deborah had just done. She had reclaimed her voice, and no amount of condescension could take that away. As the applause faded, Deborah stood, her knees still trembling but her back straight. She glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of the diners who had clapped the loudest. For the first time that evening, she truly saw them not as spectators, but as witnesses to her moment of triumph. Leonard, on the other hand, was exposed. His usual air of dominance had slipped, and no amount of charm could shield him from the truth. As Deborah walked away from the piano, she felt lighter, her confidence blooming in a way she hadn't expected. The night ended with Leonard and his group leaving quietly, their usual grand exit replaced by a hasty retreat. Deborah watched them go, feeling neither triumph nor bitterness. Her mind was already on the next step. Deborah's story is a reminder that true power comes from staying rooted in who you are and letting your passions speak louder than the ridicule of others. Never let someone else define your worth. The world is full of people like Leonard Grayson, who project their insecurities onto others to feel powerful. But resilience and authenticity are your greatest strengths. If Deborah's story inspired you, don't wait for someone like Leonard to test you. Take your step forward now. And if you want more stories of resilience and triumph, subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained. Hit the bell icon to stay updated, because your story could be next.